Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Impossible World Podcast. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, this series is uploaded whenever. Is the lighting atrocious? My phone thinks I'm talking to it. It's fine, phone. Sorry. Yes. So first things first is again when I was really making this series, going ham. I should slow down. When I was really making this series and I was like filled with just so much charisma about it, which I still am, but I've noticed that I'm not like anchoring myself within that little world that we've made, and that's kind of making it so that I can't come in here with like a complete understanding, because it's weird, because I know the entire story mapped out. Like I could tell you guys how far we are, which is essentially I'm past Hell Night Ends. I am past the aftermath and the setting of what happens when Hell Night ends. I am past after our boys get settled, and I'm also past a lot of the characters that they meet after they get settled. And you guys will understand what the hell I'm talking about, hopefully, in the future, if you guys can stick with me. Fuck, I hate the lighting. I can see in the background, and I'm like, oh, it's so dark. Well, sorry, we'll get to that. But yes, essentially I have a lot of things mapped out, but I don't have like the details and or the things I want to talk about in them. And I kind of like the idea of making this series not like super high bar to clear. Like I don't have to be perfect here. However, we've talked about that in the past, where I sometimes have like, I try to do too many things and I try to hold myself to a standard in which is just kind of impossible when I really want to do something properly. It happens. But I talked about how we should scale that back and just kind of relax. This is a podcast. It's supposed to not be like boom, 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 boom all the time. We're supposed to stumble. We're supposed to fall. That's the idea of a podcast, so to speak. It's not like an edited, highly produced video, correct? But there is still some bar I want to hold myself to, and that is I really don't want this series, and this maybe is like different for everybody. Some people could be like, I totally don't get that vibe, and then another person could be like, I totally get that vibe. And that vibe I'm talking about is I don't want this to be like kind of how do I put it, like with little effort, like literally just me being like, wouldn't that be cool? And then the main character does this cool thing and that cool thing. Like I try to do my best to not do that. I try to be like, well, the reason why this is happening is so that it can shine light on this, and try to give you guys some sort of understanding for why I think this would be an interesting story beat or encounter or a piece of media that I thought was cool from this place. I want to try to do it in this world, but also make it better in the places that I don't like, i.e. the familiar kind of thing I talked about last time with the sealed demon thing. I always like that in other movies, but I always feel like it never has enough teeth, enough power, so I thought we could do it in our world, but also still not give it too much. Well, give it power, but not power that you'll see outright immediately. Yeah, so that's a huge reason why like I haven't been making these so consistently, is because although I do want to keep this relaxed and keep this kind of like a so relaxed, chill out, we're gonna mess up, we're just kind of having a good time thinking, brainstorming, etc. of the podcast. I also want greatly for me to not do that, not just be like, but wouldn't this be sick as fuck? So I like to have some sort of outline for what I want. And unfortunately, I just haven't been putting the pressure on myself to make that outline. So again, that is basically changing this series for the time being. And again, it may change if I ever get like super creatively just jacked up, which usually happens after a time I watch a bunch of media. But over the course of these days, my passion in life right now has shifted from like usually I try to watch a good bit of anime, try to watch some good cool TV shows that I want to watch, and all those things. That's kind of like my fun time. And the fucked up thing is that right now in my life, the fun time is exercise. I know that's really strange or weird maybe, but like I really am enjoying these new exercises and the way that I'm feeling when I'm doing them. That's really taken my like focus a little bit away from like other stuff. So that's my happiness right now. So that is not exactly a like super duper creative environment. Like, you know, not a bunch of cool ideas are happening, and the idea of like doing a very cool push-up, you know. But hell, when I do that fucking push-up, I feel fucking on fire and great. So anyways, yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at right now, and that's why ideas aren't like flowing like crazy. So yes, that's why this is now going to be kind of whenever I can get to it. Hopefully I don't ever go 2 weeks without uploading it, but around 1 week, maybe 1 week on, 1 week off if I am feeling lazy. Forgive me, but that's probably what we'll do. Regardless, the other thing that you guys may have seen in video form if you guys are not listening to this podcast wise. But if I'm often just like another monitor, what's good? You guys have noticed that the lighting is fixed. This is the first video I'm filming with the lighting being good, although probably not the first one that you'll see with the lighting being good, although maybe. Honestly, probably, actually. Weird, because of trying not to go in there paced out in a way that's just weird. Regardless, yes, I got the lighting fixed, but now it's like weirdly more offset, so now I gotta fiddle with it again. Yeah, give me a minute. Now is that too much? Let's try that. Let's see if that's okay. It may be a tad bit overexposed, but regardless. So again, now we're coming into this trying not to get Grin chapter utterly blank. This is the most blank I've ever been in any of the videos you've seen, which I thought the last part was pretty us with like zero form factor. But hey, we'll see how this goes. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let us get into the Impossible World podcast. Essentially, we left off last time with our boy Grim attaining a brand new special relic. Now, of course, again, every relic that I have to me in the story is supposed to be this pillar of an interesting idea that kind of makes up for a lacking of one of the people. So again, the best example of this is Crowley is a crafter, and the biggest negative to being a crafter that I've seen is the idea of collecting resources. So if there was any way to streamline that, that would put you like miles ahead of every other crafter, if you had this thing, would be some sort of way to collect resources without having to break your back with a pickaxe or some weirdness, right? If you're thinking like fantasy kind of thing where you need to get a crystal or some nonsense, to do that. So I also like the idea of Crowley having this aesthetic with him having this like badass ball cane, like ball handle cane, and him basically taking that ball and pointing at something, and then this thing just kind of atomizing and breaking down those resources and just pulling them into this little orb inside his ball cane handle. And that is the way that he collects stuff, and that is a way to offset his negative aspects. Now, one thing that I also want to talk about is, of course, last part we talked about the wisp. I don't think I did, I don't know, maybe I did an okay job of explaining it, but basically, what I visualize when I see so there's an issue with werewolves. Let's start there. There's an issue with werewolves, and that's the idea that they are not ranged in any way. And one of the things that I was thinking about when we were thinking about just the mixture of hybrids, so again, you have this werewolf, but you also have this hybridization of beings, this kind of like Lich King necromancer thing, right? When I was thinking about it, I was trying to have some fun with the way you could scale the power rating, so or like the power functionality of both. Like they kind of infect each other in a small way right now. Again, in the future, I would love to do like a chapter where it's all about like melding the two deeper and deeper into themselves and making this fucking like annihilation beast. But right now they're still at odds kind of with each other. They only accept Grim as their player piece, I guess, but they don't accept the others, I guess. But they are still benefiting from being in the same pool, I guess, as well as it's just that they're very far away in that pool from each other. But anyways, regardless, one of the things I thought would be really, really interesting is the idea of if we could try to mess with that infection of the other's power type. So for instance, the Lich kind of benefits from the ferocity and the strength of the werewolf, and the werewolf benefits from the like magical power rating of the Lich, which is dark, which is like to me, I think it's like undead dark power kind of. It's not like pure beautiful light like you would see from a priest or something, or a paladin. Instead it's this black tar kind of level of ugliness to its power, and I thought that'd be a really cool way to show that in the werewolf, where the werewolf is like this pitch black fur. So with that premise set in mind, where basically the werewolf is gaining benefits from this being his affinity basically being darkness because of the Lich, I think it would be really cool if there was a way for us to kind of play with that as a backdrop, but then also try to find a way to buff up the werewolf with that kind of form as well. Because again, the way that I'm kind of breaking these out is that there's like a bitch ass werewolf who's just kind of like a quarter wolf, whatever. I don't know what you want. You could give him dog ears. I don't give a shit. But then there's the transforming kind of werewolf, which is like a hybridization of both. So it's human, but can kind of jump off into being kind of werewolf-like. I see, for whatever reason, I see like Teen Wolf kind of level shit, where you just get like stronger, and you get some good animal instincts, get some speed, you get some strength. But then there's big bad werewolf, which is full bore. You are either human or you're transforming into a full-born beast. And our protagonist, whatever, main character Grim, kind of finds out that if he, by accident in a way, that if he turns on the wolf in a split second and then kind of turns it off again, he can attain some of that beast-like extraordinary power without having to go full bore. And it's his way of kind of gaming the system in an interesting way, because I always thought that'd be a really cool way of fighting. Like if you could somehow find a gimmick within your thing, and just like smash that fundamental gimmick to the ground to where you basically become so abnormal from everyone else, in that sense. So again, other werewolf people would probably just go ballistic shit. He, on the other hand, has this kind of understanding of, okay, well, if I just keep practicing this, then I can get further and further without going absolutely mad. And we'll get to the him unleashing at a certain point. But for right now, he's very kind of pacing himself from trying to keep himself him while he's still using that power. But anyways, regardless, this was my idea for the idea of this wisp. This I don't know how to call that besides that. This wisp of wrath. And again, I really like the idea of making up for the lack of ranged combat when it comes to the werewolf. So now our character can just and just summon forth a wisp of black tar, just eraser mode kind of level shit, where it just obliterates and chews through everything in its path. And again, this is kind of setting up the... Again, one of the question you guys might have is, well, why are you giving this to Grim? You know, who's to say Crowley couldn't use this kind of nice trump card, right? Like maybe Crowley finds a relic, which is a deck of cards, which if he pulls one of these cards, he has a chance of basically just doing a shit ton of damage, but it's kind of like a trump card. It can only do it once per day, and the deck of cards is utterly random, whether it's a giant fire blast that can nuke a town, or something like an ice barrage that freezes someone in place for a month. Something like that. It could have been, we could mess around with these cool ideas of limiting them, and who knows, maybe that's something that we give Crowley later on, because this whole chasing relics doesn't end here. But anyways, regardless, no. The reason why I wanted to do this is because, again, I mentioned this, but I want to have this theme that we complete at the end, or not the end, at some point in the future, with our main character, being that he is the complete inverse of what someone would understand as being heroic. Because it's something that I've always found really interesting. The idea and the prospect of being okay, well, here's this beautiful armor-cladded knight, ornate in silver, beautiful armor. He has a white cape, a badass helmet. He speaks with such beautiful tones, and when he slashes and saves the day, there's not a single drop of blood on him. The crowd cheers and says, "Hooray, a hero!" When oftentimes, especially if you look back in history, a lot of the people with the most ornate, beautiful armor were part of the King's Guard, which had very little experience in actual combat, and they were notorious for getting fucking destroyed by any person who had a sense of understanding of combat. So it's almost I don't know, just because my understanding of history, I'm okay, the more ornate and beautiful your armor, the more not battle tested you somewhat are. It's kind of like if you go to the skate park and you see a person with a brand new board, he's probably pretty shit, or at least just got a new board, right? But if you see the dude who has a worn out skateboard, and I bet on that guy, because he can kill, because he's dedicated time. You can see that time invested in his armor. So this is my way of also wanting that. I want Grim to be this very kind pillar for a lot of people, but if people are far back and they don't know anything about him, and they just see his combat kind of play style, they'll see him summoning forth this black tar wisp just to eviscerate things in bloody carnage, or see him just use the wolf to dash right on top of someone and then just obliterate them with whatever weapon he picked up off the ground, and breaking that blade inside of them, and him screaming all the while, and they'll think this is a fucking bad monster, and I want to play with that in the future. I want to play with the idea of something that I don't know. We could go one way and basically make Grim be oh, no one likes me. Ooh. But I think it would be far more endearing for someone to have a character that I haven't seen in many TV shows that's okay, Yeah, I'm 100% okay with people hating me, because that's okay. Not everyone needs to like me. I like me just fine. The whole world could be against me, and I like me just fine. And honestly, I have people that I care about who actually have better opinions than me. So I value their opinion. Therefore, I don't value yours. You know what I mean? Like, I only need so much. I don't need the world. I just need me, and hopefully some others, some friends. And that's enough to fill me, and that's enough to make me 100% fine with people screaming at me and telling me that I'm awful and a monster and trash. So to me, that's a nice moment of character development, and I think it'd be really cool if we also set it up in a way that was like, I don't know, Crowley was about to get super pissed and like beat the shit out of all these people, and then only for our main character to be like, it's like, what? It's nothing. It's whatever. It's completely fine, and then just to move on. So I think that'd be a nice story moment that we could execute on in the future. But regardless, yes, so that's just kind of explanations for why we have now this badass steel wolf gauntlet claw-ish looking human, if I can, hybridization of a metal gauntlet that's like the mixture of like silver but this black steel as well. It's a little bit jagged around the elbow and kind of climbing up the hands. All that shit looks a bit rough, rustic again, put through the grinder, but also looks sturdy and strong so that it's lasted, getting put through the grinder. Yes. And again, the way, partially what I see when I see him like use the wisp, it's the same thing as I see when he uses his burst, his werewolf. Get on top of someone, beat them up. It's basically like a little tiny bar in the corner of your screen when you're playing a video game. That's like, hey, you have 5 mana slots, or when you're playing Assassin's Creed Brotherhood and you have like those 3 arrows that show you like you can call an assassin and use one of those arrows. That's kind of what I see for the werewolf. It's like you can call forth this wisp, but it's the same basically as using your burst, maybe 2 times. So yeah, but there'd be moments when you probably could do that, and it'd be better to get range rather than combat or melee. Anyways, so that was just recap nonsense, but I thought it was important because, again, I wanted to make it so it's not just us being like, but wouldn't it be dope as shit if he had like a wisp to fucking annihilate things? And I'm like, well, no, yes, yes, I think it would be pretty cool. But again, this is me trying to build upon the arc of the main character having a play style and a combat style that is unpretty, very ugly, an ugly playstyle basically, but super effective, and is the thing that is truly going to be able to save the day. It's not something that's going to be, this beautiful arrow rain where you summon forth a bunch of astral yellow bright stardust arrows that just fucking annihilate your foes. But wait, it's a tiny stick going through a giant ogre, so you need a lot of bang for your buck with that, dude. Anyways, or you could summon forth this black tar wisp thing that looks like a nightmare, but will literally leave nothing but the person's ankles in its wake. So I would choose the wisp thing. But anyways, also just a quick little side comment. Stay hydrated as well, as those of you guys who are watching on YouTube, like off in the side of your screen or whatever. Or maybe just watching just me. Holy shit! If you're just watching just little old me and nothing else, then hot damn, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I keep looking downwards. I have this issue where I keep looking like at my feet, because there's certain places like I'll either look really high or really low when I'm thinking, and it looks like super not good, especially if you're doing a podcast with a visual element. You probably should look at the goddamn camera lens when you're talking. But when I'm like I'm in the depths of my imagination. I'm not like focusing on camera looking and stuff like that. So forgive me. Last we left off with our boy Grim getting his gauntlet. Again, I want to kind of stay away from the super specific. So again, they get the gauntlet. Him and Crowley have a kind of a back and forth. Maybe they get in the car and then they start talking while Crowley's going to his next relic. And at this point, I would want there to be kind of visual elements that show that the day is getting, like, morning is slowly starting to come. Like maybe just a little bit of light is starting to go, or maybe the moon's dropped all the way down. And yeah. Anyways, him and Crowley both in the car. Sure, that'd be a good time to explain what the hell's going on with this kit. Again, I haven't really thought of anything, and sure, we could do that as well. Maybe he goes into his skill and he finds out that, okay, this wisp thing has a giant progression. I can invest in the amount of times I can use it. I can invest in the benefits from what happens, because basically it's this wisp thing that goes and tears things apart, but then inevitably kind of deconstructs and kind of transparently comes back to my gauntlet. So there's things like lifesteal, maybe things like a soul rip, any weird gameplay gimmick that we want to add later on. But right now I don't have any idea, and I don't really want to invest in thinking about that right now. Although yes, that is something that we definitely could invest in. Regardless, yes. So the next thing that we need to think about is the next relic. Now again, let me paint the scene a little bit. Him and Crowley are driving around town with mayhem kind of just trickled around, seeing people freak out, seeing a giant person who looks just massive, who start growing hair and bash into a building wall, crumbling, him falling into that crumbling hole that he made, covered in bricks as they fall, and him and Crowley just pass on by. Like, shit's crazy. They see bat shit in the air. They hear screams a little bit. They hear a bunch of weird nonsense, and for whatever reason, him and Crowley, they just listen to tunes, because at this point they have accepted insanity and also they've achieved good things. So again, just to be like realistic to a degree, even though we're kind of in the beginning we weren't exactly realistic in the sense that these two people just kind of like, fuck it, let's just make the best of this. But that's part of like the main character's insanity as well, like not insanity but his charm, I guess you could also call it, or like the reason why they are in the place that they are is because they're a little bit weird, you know. But it's also because they've achieved a lot of shit. Like, I hate when I see stuff in anime where the dude like takes down armies and does like all these amazing things, but then it still has like so much incredible self-doubt and shit. It's like, what? It doesn't make sense. Like, if you keep achieving things, and you, especially with two friends, you both keep like commending each other on achieving those said things, you therefore gain confidence and gain betterment from those said things. So that's kind of what we're talking about here, where Crowley and them are basically like accepting the madness, but also confident about what they've achieved in the night, and that they can continue to achieve it, and it keeps getting easier achieving those said things. Anyways, regardless, let's say that Crowley is kind of driving around, and he keeps kind of, beforehand it was like this thing is pulling you to it. You know, these relics are like screaming at you that this is your piece of the puzzle. This is the thing inside of you that is screaming, that's the thing that you need. Like, trust me, I've been a demon, or I've been a wolf, or I've been a necromancer for far longer than you have. Go get this, just subconsciously. But alas, it's quieter. Crowley is finding it hard to find out where this thing is, up and down streets, all these kinds of things. But finally, they come to I don't know. See, this is where I talked about us being like super unprepared for this, because I know the relic, I know the plot element that I want to imply in this, which is more than the other ones, and I just don't know the setting. I don't know the beasts. In fact, I don't want to do any more enemies. Let's take a break from enemies. Let's do kind of like a dungeon. The dungeon is trying to kill you, not necessarily the alive or undead force. So yeah, sure, I guess let's do that. They come to an alley and they see this, you know how there's sometimes, it's kind of like in London, I see them a lot, but it's basically like you go down to a subway, except it's a lot more ornate, like you know how let's just say it. It's a stairway going down with an archway. Kind of looks like a catacomb, but it stairway going down in an alley, kind of just oddly placed there. So anyways, him and Crowley, after talking about how they just can't get a beat on this thing, and Crowley's kind of confused about like what's going on, but also Grimm weirdly says like this is it. Like when they arrive, they both feel something pull them to this place. So almost with both of them, they were able to find this thing. Otherwise, they would be kind of clueless. So anyways, they see this kind of catacomb-looking thing with stairways going down. And as they make their way down, we're going to breeze by this. There's a bunch of traps. Anything you could think of. There's some of those great like swaying traps with a giant blade on it, where you got to time your jump and all that stuff, or time your movement. There's also there's like a balancing board where Grimm just fucking ices that shit and goes perfectly across, and Crowley's terrified. But then Grimm summons one of his fucking undead little mummy things, and he heaves Crowley over his shoulder and runs across. And then bang, they're across that. So they're both utilizing their mimical. Their things to do each kind of function. Same thing with maybe there's an old rustic broken ass torch that you need to place in a socket, but it's all rusted and dead. But Crowley breaks it down, reconstructs it as a perfectly new steel torch, in which he places and unlocks a door. Boom, bam, cool. Moving on. We could have blasted through it as well. Moving on. Tons of ways to do all these traps. They progress. Anyways, and this is where I have an understanding for not only what I want, but yes. Okay, so they arrive at this kind of tunnel, and it's, again, the best way I could describe it is kind of like a catacomb. There's stairs, but it's a lot of it's like rock, like earth, underground rock kind of cave-esque vibe. But anyways, as they progress, they notice that the traps have let up. And they make their way down these stairs, and as they finally get on a proper path again, they notice that the room has more or less changed. It's a lot more decorative, and as they progress, they notice pictures on their left as they're moving through this hallway, as well as maybe a carpet and all these lovely things. Anyways, to the right of them, there's all this writing across as they walk through. And him and Crowley take a minute, and they say, "What is this? Maybe this could help us with something." So then Crowley, because he has an entirely different skill tree than Grimm, and a lot of it's like utility kind of based to a certain extent, he finds a skill that basically allows him age-old knowledge or something like that, or demon knowledge, whatever it is. He purchases it, and it allows him to read almost any language, or just maybe this one, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Regardless, as they start walking, he starts reading and reciting this old tale. I don't know why, I got a really big kick into these like legends and tales tied to these relics. And this tale I have an idea of, but I don't quite know exactly how I want to talk about it. All right, well, I guess I'll just jump in and try to figure it out as it go. All right, so long ago, long ago, in a world with monsters and knights, crusaders and all the like, one of these badass crusaders just so happened to be one of the best swordsmen in all the land. Sure, let's say that. He was renowned for his expert combat ability and the amount of monsters that he slayed. In particular, he was renowned for slaying undead. That was his jam. Everyone praised him for it. He was loved by that, and that love attained him a wife and children. But alas, everyone's luck eventually runs out, unless you prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Anyways, regardless, yes, so eventually his luck runs out, and he, of course, drops dead. He could be attacked by a monster, who knows. Regardless, he goes into the ground. And of course, what does he become but an undead? But unlike the other undead, over the course of his life, as he slayed more and more and more, their souls embedded into him, giving him more affinity, I guess, with an undead understanding. So regardless, one night, boom, shock of lightning strikes, waking him up as he starts to climb out of his grave. Overjoyed but also confused with what's going on, he makes his way back to his house, only to find, ooh, how do you want to do this? We could do it, we could do him real bad, or we could do it not so bad. I mean, again, we're trying to make a world where monsters aren't just inherently evil, so let's do that. Okay, yeah, okay. So as he arrives home, with his newfound, excitement for life after, having experienced death, he of course walks into his home, only to find, I don't know, his best friend, maybe someone banging his wife or something horrible. No more than 2 days after he has fallen. Sure, let's say that. Let's say it was one of the most renowned generals that used to constantly commend him on his combat prowess. And conveniently, used to always give him jobs that were further out in the kingdom. So he had to spend some time away from his family. I hate this. Anyways, regardless, yes. As he sees the man with his wife, he notices that his breathing starts to become more jagged, and then eventually they notice him standing in the doorway, covered in rain, mud, and muck. And as his breathing increases as his rage builds, boom, he just lunges and rips to shreds both his wife and the general person, his higher up, I guess. Now, after he's done tearing in to these people, alas, it made a lot of noise, even amongst the lightning and the storm. And as he looks up, he sees his daughter, but consumed by the rage, ends up hurting the one thing that he truly did undoubtedly love. And in his despair, and in his sadness, he only wished to forget. Again, him and Grimm are both walking further and further and further down this hall. Crowley's reading, so his attention is on the wall as they're walking, but Grimm holds up his arm, kind of interrupting the story. Because he wants to point out to Crowley that there's a bunch of levers and shit all over the ground. There's a bunch of like holes in the wall that clearly look like shit's going to come out of it. But alas, they can also see within range there is this beautiful ornate obelisk holding a beautiful red ring. Red ring. Let's just say it, red ring. Maybe it's green, because I think Crowley gave him a ring or something. Regardless, Grimm points out that it looks like there's some traps. I don't see any lever. I don't see anything. I don't understand what the game is. So then Crowley realizes that the kind of like outdrawn words across the wall kind of have just a giant bunch up right here. So he says maybe there's something here. But Crowley is fixated on the wall. Despite he sees the traps, he goes back to reading. And in his head, he starts to read by himself. Beforehand, he was speaking aloud. But anyways, he finishes the story. And the story goes, finally, when he came to, when the storm and the raging thunder and the rain stopped, he had seen what he did. He'd seen that everything that he loved was ripped to shreds. And he was consumed by incredible grief. And in his ever-consuming grief, he still noticed that he had his wife's ring on. And he feels such hatred and sadness for the innocence of his child, and the betrayal for her, despite he was dead. It's a weird emotional thing, regardless. All these things, these emotions permeate with one single thought. And that thought is, all I want to do is forget. All I want to do is be dead. Just have all of this gone. I don't ever want to feel this or remember this ever again. And all those thoughts permeate and permeate and permeate as his soul and his sorrow bleed all into this single ring. In the depths of my despair lies the wish to not be noticed, to not remember, to not have anyone remember or acknowledge what I was, because he kind of takes summary of all the things. Like, again, he wouldn't have been in this situation if he didn't want glory, if he didn't want to be this magical, amazing knight. He thinks he would just be happier if he was just completely unnoticed and if people would just have forgotten about him, rather than him being this kind of legend, and in being a legend and him seeking to be a legend, him basically being more likely to become an undead and therefore have done this horrible tragedy to his family. So that's the whole idea of like not wanting to be a legend, not wanting to be noticed, not wanting any of this, because that is the root cause of what happened. And all these emotions bleed into this ring. But anyways, Crowley reads and he says, "This ring is for only a person that wants the world to forget them as much as I did." And Crowley is kind of taken aback by this. But then Crowley hears a chuckle. And his head snaps to look at what the heck Grimm is laughing at. And he notices that Grimm is all the way near the ring. And he just plucks it out of the little socket. And he walks right by Crowley and he's like, "It turns out we did it. There was nothing to it." And he goes and throws Crowley the ring because, again, it's his turn for the item. And Crowley catches it. And then Grimm just kind of strolls past him, all the way past him, making his way out of the tomb and all that stuff. And Crowley sits there for a bit, kind of like confused, bewildered by the story, and Crowley takes one step forward near kind of the traps, and then immediately this trap flings at him, and he steps back and just about died for how brutal and quick this trap was. And then he stops for a minute. He's bewildered by what's going on. And again, Grimm didn't ever finish the story, so he never found out the part, like how to beat the trap is basically only somebody who can beat this trap is someone who wants the world to forget them as much as the other guy did. This guy in this horrible story. And it's pretty horrible. I would like to go back and make it somewhat better, like giving more credence to why he wants to be forgotten. But anyways, like I think my original take on the story was him like at his funeral, and that's where his resentment came from, where like he became an undead, and because his family loved him so much, they kept going to the cemetery. So he goes berserk and hurts his family, and his last dying wish or whatever is the idea of not wanting people to have remembered him or noticed him because that's what killed his families, because they kept coming back. But this is two-pronged for me. One of the things is, one of the relics I thought for Crowley for a long time was, because of the nature of Grimm's werewolf, one of the affinities of that is that it is a quiet thing. It's a sealed power in general, so therefore he gets the benefits of being basically being no one's able to understand his power because it's behind that wall, and then that's everything. Unless he starts really using it, then you get an understanding for it. But Crowley, however, does have that projection. In fact, that's the thing he suffers from greatly, is this projecting this aura of like, I'm a fucking demon. Hey, I'm starting to level up because I'm playing with this werewolf, whatever person, and I'm starting to become stronger, and his aura becomes better or bigger. So anyways, I thought of a relic that I thought would be really nice. It could be worn by either of them, but of course it's worn by Crowley because Crowley has the issue of kind of giving off this like horrible intent and making people go crazy, because that was something we messed with at the beginning of the book as well, is just by people being around him when he's experiencing great emotion sets them off because of his demonic nature or whatever. Regardless, so the relic's idea is that it's basically a neutralization. So again, you put this thing on and it hides your power and hides your presence. So it makes people kind of think of whatever, like it makes you blend into the background more, which is perfect for the kind of character that Crowley is going to play, as it's kind of like behind the scenes puppet master kind of vibe. So the relic is perfect for him. But then I also had to attach a story to that relic. And to me, I thought, in the midst of coming up with the like idea of, okay, there was this person that wanted the world to forget him, or wanted the world to just not notice him, move on, kind of thing. That's a story of the relic, but I also thought, well, we could do a cool story thing here, which I don't think I executed perfectly explaining it to you guys, but we could do a really cool story thing where we could explain that here's this jovial, jolly, kind of insane person in this character that we created called Grimm, who's basically this person who accepts who he is the first time he becomes it, and moves forward with what he is, and also tries to help others to also do that, Crowley and etc. And we'll see in the future that that's kind of his beat. But ultimately, everyone's going nuts at Hell Night. Everyone's losing their fucking mind and terrified, and he's just jolly. Now, why is that? Because he, of course, he loves monsters. So this is something that's like a weird dream for him. That's kind of nice. Also terrifying, but still. So yes, that's something that I wanted to play with, but also I wanted to play with the idea of he's very happy, bubbly, and kind. But that doesn't mean that he is not equally as absolutely broken on the inside, which I thought would be interesting to do in a way that's subtle. And this to me is a really subtle way of doing it. So again, at this moment, Crowley realizes that, okay, so wait, like my friend that's really bubbly and kind and cheerful actually wants the world to forget him and doesn't want people to acknowledge him. Huh. And those are some deep-seated issues, by the way. To not want to take ownership of something good you've done is a big issue. Also, not wanting people to remember you because of whatever deep-seated issue you may have. Whether that be like a trauma because your friends abandoned you, so therefore you're just like, I would be better off without having people around me in general so they didn't have to feel this pain. Whatever you want to attach to that kind of sociology, but regardless, it was my way of showing that really quick there's this just kind of like this subliminal thing that's not so subliminal, but pretty in your face, that's like, hey, the person that you may be seeing that's super happy and jolly actually is just as broken as the people he tries to help, But yeah, that's essentially was one of the story elements I wanted to kind of do, is could we do a story narrative thing where we can both show Grimm's kind of broken as much as everyone else, but also do it in a way that's quieter, that's not just like him being like, by the way, I'm really fucking sad and broken and shit, but instead him being like, okay, well, they onward and upward, only to realize that he's just as like utterly annihilated as everyone else. And for this to honestly be sectioned to Crowley, and at this point in the story, I would really want, as a narrative thing, for it to go into Crowley's mind and to be like, Crowley, this resonates with him, like, holy shit, this person that I thought was just super positive and upbeat and just going with the flow is actually like fucked up, really kind of really bad, wanting the whole world to forget about you, to the extent in which this man who experienced such great suffering wants, and you were worthy of that because you feel the same way as that man did. That's terribly sad. And for Crowley to kind of be like, okay, you want the world to forget about you? No, that's not happening. So that's my kind of call to what's going to happen in the future with Crowley. But this is also Crowley's outlook on him for being like, okay, you want the world to forget about you, and you don't really care if you're acknowledged. In fact, you'd prefer if you're not. All right, we can play that game. Kind of like, no, bitch. I'm going to make you the most renowned, and I'm going to make you the most whatever. Because he thinks that he deserves it in all these things, or whatever it may be. Maybe he's just like, no, like that's not okay. Regardless of whatever it is, but Crowley, I would like to have that moment where he's like, no, we're not letting you have this. But yes, that is the moment where him and Crowley kind of have this meeting point where, throughout the chorus, Grimm kind of understands and shows that he understands and see past Crowley's shit. But also, this is the moment where Crowley says, okay, I see what you want and what you're gonna do. Like you'll be the person that never takes the credit. You'll be the person that never does this. So I'm going to basically subvert that to where I always make sure you get paid. I'm always gonna make sure you you get your enough respect or understanding or renowned, all these kinds of things. So, and in the same sense, Grimm will always make up for Crowley's jaded personality, so to speak, or like a confidence or lack of friendship making kind of prowess. So they're kind of balancing each other out in this way. And again, this was the whole point of this story for me is usually I do the whole weird thing where, I'm sure a lot of you guys do it too, where you take whatever thing that you enjoy, race, idea that you're attracted to, and you go ham with that. Like, for instance, the amount of stories that I made when I was younger, I was going through puberty and whatnot, and I was like, well, what if the main character's sidekick was like a very beautiful woman? And it's like, and they fall in love with all this nonsense. But this was my way of being like, okay, well, what if we take that off the table, and it's just a really healthy, fantastic, what people should strive for friendship, kind of friendship. What if we do that instead, me? What if we challenge ourselves in that way, and we don't just take the easy way out of being like, but what if it was like a childhood friend that became like a fucking badass, and you stuck together and love and happiness? Instead, it's just like, well, no, what if you just had a really good fucking friend? Like someone that was there for you, that understood you, that accepted the things that they couldn't change about you, and instead worked on the things that they couldn't, but also just accepted you is another thing. But also try to make you better in the appropriate way, not just trying to change you, but instead trying to help you grow and become stronger, better, all that. And was like anchored to you 110%. And to me, I think this is Crowley's moment where that is cemented, where like, again, it's no longer about, it's about like the idea of, okay, this person that's my friend, this person that I care about has this thought process. It's almost like when you meet a friend that has like insecurity issues about maybe the way they look, but they're fucking gorgeous and they're beautiful, right? You want to make sure that they acknowledge that and they don't end up with someone who's shitty to them, or bad to them. So this is kind of Crowley's way to accept a much bigger extent, because again, if I were to write this out and do a narrative thing within a book, I would go into like the sorrow that this person feels, and the idea of feeling so betrayed and sad and lost, and just wanting a circumstance that would make him want people to forget him and to not notice him. And again, I feel like we probably could spin a better tale than the Paladin thing, but that's what I got for right now. But anyways, yes, ladies and gentlemen, I think maybe that's it for the time being. So, I think I'll cover this in the next part, but basically, we've gotten to the place where I want to be, where at this point they have ended Hell Knight. So I think maybe the next part I'll go on into this, but they leave the catacomb with Crowley basically kind of being quiet because he's found something out about our main character, and then maybe even Crowley being like, hey, let's just go get some food. Like, let's just try to I feel bad for you right now. Let's try to go do something nice. So then they go get some food, and then they end Hell Knight basically overlooking the city as the sun's coming up. Sure, let's do that. Weirdly romantic, not trying to be, just trying to signify, or not that the sun's coming. Let's not do that. Let's say that the moon's going down. Let's say that. I think I said that beforehand, but let's say the moon's going down. And then after they're done eating, after they're done reminiscing and talking, which I would like to go into more detail with that specific conversation, they go back to a apartment. Sure, let's say that Grimm says his apartment's fucked because he just burst through the wall or the window, so it's all cold or some shit. So they go to Crowley's, and they go to basically just fucking sleep because they've just gone everywhere the whole day. And that's where we'll start up with the next part, which I think. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I think the next part, Hell Night, has ended, largely, to an extent. Oh man, that's going to be... I'm going to have to make notes for that one, because it's so much shit that I got to go into about it, because it's just complicated. It's like a demigod nonsense shit. Oh, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day. This has been the podcast, the Impossible World podcast. Again, I think the next part I really want to have an outline for what I want to talk about, because this one was kind of me being like, how does this stupid tale that I talked about with this, like, basically manifesting this ring for like that makes people not notice you but also forget you, but also it hides your power rating, was also the other thing I was trying to talk about, because it's basically an answer to Crowley's like demon aura that he kind of projects and shit, just because I didn't want people to go and ape shit around Crowley all the time. But also there's a show that I watch which is fantastic called Overlord, but Ainz has this ring that basically hides his power rating as well, and there's a scene in the show where he takes it off and people just like shit their pants because they're like, what the fuck is happening? Like, I'm experiencing like 50 G wave, like, nonsense kinetic energy. It's like, oh my god. So anyways, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of your day. The next part will be ending Hell Night. I appreciate you for your time. Subscribe button over there, as well as 2 videos further that way. Thank you, and